Hello everyone, this is Punar. I talk lots about Formula One in this channel. I get frequently asked, how can I get to Formula One? I don't know why people ask me this because I don't work for Formula One. I never work for Formula One. So I thought it would be a great idea to start a series that I interview people who work for Formula One or a Formula One team so we can get into details about working in F1, how their experience, how they got into Formula One and stuff like that. So today we start with Greg Stuart from Formula1.com, who is a staff writer for them, who has a great experience background with motorsport and content creating. I really enjoyed his interview actually. I really enjoyed his background stories. Hope you like it too. Hello everyone and hello Greg, welcome to my channel. It's nice to have you here. How are you?
Thank you, Pina. Very nice to be here. I'm very well, thank you. It's very sunny in the UK, despite our reputation, so feeling good.
Yeah,
good lockdown.
It looks very shiny on your face. It's vitamin D for the day.
No, but it's good. You know, I was saying I'd like to get a haircut for the interview, but I can't, so you're going to have to tolerate me. I shaved.
You look great. It's no problem at all.
Thank you.
For everyone, longer hair, it's the new look for this year and last year, actually. Today, I want to talk about more detail about your experience in Formula One and in your career. So I want to first start with, like, what was your first F1 experience that you can remember? Like, what was your first race you ever watched or something like that? And when did you start interested in the sport?
Oh, yeah. So I grew up with an uncle and a father who were very into motorsports. So I'm born in 1986. I'm 35 now. Unfortunately, it's very sad, but my first proper memory of Formula One crystallizing in front of me was the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, Senna dying. It was so strange. I don't know what happens to the brain at those points in your childhood, but it seemed to become super active, and I can still remember the feeling as an 8-year-old that I thought it hadn't looked like a very big crash. It looked like, oh, it skated off, and it just, you know, whatever 8-year-old judgment I had, I was like, no, it didn't look too bad. And then, you know, you just get this sense, and, you know, unfortunately, I've had to learn subsequently that you kind of know by the vibe when something bad has happened. So, yeah, Senna's death is sort of when I kind of really woke up to Formula One. But to speak on a more positive note about it, I mean, my uncle let me watch one of his videos, which is called Mansell Ferrari. So it was like a VHS tape. And it was like the story of Mansell's 1990. And I've got this really vivid memory of like all these really cool looking multicolored cars coming through Rascats at Monaco. So like that Minardi from 1990 that was quite cool, and the Benetton. And I still love that period of racing. I think it was like a great period.
Yeah, that's period. Like, I heard lots of people like talking about, like, when they remember those times, like they always say good stuff about those days.
Also, I was weirdly a really big fan of the Hill family, so both Graham Hill and Damon Hill. I became like a little fanatic about them. So, you know, all my history projects would be about Graham Hill winning the 1968 World Championship and stuff like that. And then also, it was a good time for motorsport in general. You know, I think World Rally Championship at that period, you know, growing up in Britain, we had Colin McRae, who was champion in 95. The British Touring Car Championship was huge at that time, with all those like Ford Mondeos. They were the most desirable Ford Mondeos in the world. And yeah, I feel like I grew up in a bit of a golden era, even if Senna dying, unfortunately, was my first memory.
Yeah.
I still remember the excitement of seeing the yellow helmet with those blue and white overalls and that car. And yeah, it was all just wiped out in a second. And also, you know, not to forget Roland Ratzenberger as well.
Yeah.
But obviously, Ratzenberger hadn't attained that iconic statement, you know, level that Senna had.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very, it was an impressive moment for a child, even if it was very sad. I can still sort of access the sadness, like, you know, it's sort of imprinted on my memory somewhere in my body.
Yeah, I feel like you started with the wrong foot to sport, but you also come a long way from that time, and you got something positive out of it, I guess. So I want to ask you, like, did you actually like all planned out, like I'm gonna be a Formula One stuff writer and I'm gonna make it, like get into the Formula One, or it was just like that you go somewhere, you start to work, and then something happens and you get into motorsport, and then Formula One happens? Like, you know, like in a career, like you don't know exactly where you're going every time. So how was that happened for you?
Yeah, you know, like, you know, putting together a career is, you know, unless you're very driven, you know, it's a bit of like fumbling around in the dark. Was there, it had never been like a dream of mine necessarily to be a journalist. But once I'd got through the English education system and was deciding to go to university, it was literally a question of, well, you're terrible at maths, you're terrible at geography, etc., etc., etc. What could you do? And so I just chose English literature, which, not to denigrate anybody who studies English literature, it's fine, but it's sort of 3 years of reading books, which is very pleasant. But, you know, now I know when people have to like pay for their education, I would personally advocate, you know, if you've got this notion that you want to be a journalist, maybe take more like a vocational journalism degree or something. But so I took an English literature degree, and I'd kind of been brought up thinking that, you know, you'd sort of go to university, come out with a degree, and then within 3 years or so, I'd be like editor of a very big newspaper. Which A, is stupid, and B, I graduated in 2008. So I graduated into the financial crisis. So it was like just the worst possible moment. So that, combined with my naivety, meant that a sort of year after graduating, I was working for a record label in East London. And then, you know, because music had always been a sort of joint love. And I played guitar in bands, and they sort of nearly made it, you know, getting played on the radio a bit. But it never quite happened. But then so it looked for a time like I was going to go down the music route. And at the same time,
something happened there, I guess. Like,
yeah. Well, you know, my dirty secret that I try and keep hidden from all my colleagues is that actually, it's going back to Damon Hill. I think at the end of 1996, when Damon Hill lost his seat at Williams after becoming the world champion, as a 10-year-old, I was so distraught by this maltreatment of my hero, that it almost took a bit of shine off Formula One from me at that age. And then I ended up going to school where I had no friends who were really into Formula One. So actually, sort of from about 97 to about 2010, I was very like in and out of F1. I don't like to admit it, that's quite a long time, you know? But it was it wasn't that big a part of my life for a time. But so then, bring it back to 2010. So I was working at this record label with a boss who was a bit dodgy, we say in the UK.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know. I hope there's a good Turkish word for dodgy that you can put in the subtitles.
Yeah, I can manage that.
You can find that. And I was just like, you know, this is going nowhere. This is not like a good job. And so I went back to school to do journalism masters, graduated out of that. And then from that, what I was going to do was go into like car magazines. So I was an avid reader of like Top Gear magazine, and I really wanted to go down that route. And I've always loved cars in parallel with liking motorsport. So I was in a position, fortunately, where I could do internships, which I know is not possible for everybody, but I did internship at Top Gear magazine for like 2 months. So I got to drive on the Top Gear test track and all that kind of stuff, which was very exciting. And then I kind of did this 2 months with Top Gear, and then I kind of hoped that they'd be like, and now here's a job. Yeah. And they didn't, for whatever reason. But then, so I had a friend who worked at Red Bull, and it turned out that Red Bull, the company, not the Formula One team, were looking for a motorsports editor because they were sort of doing editorial work. So I went and spoke to the man who became my boss, a man called Paul Keith, and I did a shift for him, just doing web editing, this in 2012. And then I went to leave the shift, and he was like, right, well, I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, have I got a job? Yeah.
Finally.
He was like, yeah. So my mum was delighted because she'd been haranguing me to go and get a proper job after lots of internships where I was getting paid like £5 a day and stuff. You know, you'd end up out of pocket if you had to take the train.
That's actually like every mom's wishes, like get a proper job.
I remember I was going for my first day at Top Gear, and I was very excited about it, even though it was like £5 a day. And she was like, it would be good if you could start getting paid. Like, I know, mother.
Yeah, I want that too, but...
yeah. So, sorry, then I was with Red Bull, the company, from 2012 to 2018. I went through a few different roles there, just covering like rally, Formula One, etc. And then I saw, I think it was on LinkedIn, the job with Formula One, and you know, it's kind of exciting because, you know, usually if you see a Formula One job, it's with a magazine that covers Formula One, but this was actually Formula One, and it was one of those moments which are rare when you just go through a job spec and you're like, that's me. So I was like, hang on, can I actually get this job? So I applied. Then I went for an interview. Usually when I do job interviews, I'm a sort of nervous wreck who's just babbling incoherently. But for some reason, this one I felt good. A slight sad note was that it was a cold day, I remember, and I put on an overcoat. And actually, the last time I'd worn the overcoat had been to go to a funeral of a friend of mine called Chris, who sadly had a heart attack when he was 35. And that's the last time I wore this coat. And he was like a huge motorsports fan. I raced for like a year in a very low like club level, and he used to come and see me race. And so just outside the interview, I saw that thing, and it kind of made me think like, okay, Chris is with me. I'm going to go get this job. And I got it, and that was 2018, and suddenly I was like a staff writer at Formula One.
Yeah.
Easy. Only took 20 years. Easy. Yeah. Well, so it was like 6 years of sort of professional experience to get to staff writer level. But I had been an editor before with Red Bull as a sort of deputy sports editor covering like hockey and stuff. But then I kind of figured that it's better to be on like a bigger ladder with Formula One, and that's why I went down that route. So yeah, it's a bit of I wouldn't prescribe that route to anybody if they're looking to get into Formula One, but that was my one. So that's how I got here.
I feel like your story like is way interesting than I thought. It's got more like ups and downs. Like
it's longer.
Yeah.
It's longer than I thought. I mean, I suppose at 35, I'm maybe bordering it slightly old to be a staff writer. Usually, I suppose you kind of get that done in your career, maybe in your late 20s, early 30s, but then, you know, there's no conventional way to do it. And at the same time, I was, you know, I had the job title deputy editor with Red Bull when I was 30. So
yeah,
it's sort of confused.
But it's
fine.
still for Formula One. Like,
It's
as you said, like when you go to the Formula1.com and you know there are some people are doing that content, but still it seems like something that more than human does. Like it's as you see when you see a job on like LinkedIn, like Formula1.com is looking for, like, you say, is this real Formula One or not? Like, it's something not like working for a team or maybe like a company that sponsors Formula One or any team. Like it's the Formula One itself. So it's a bit unreal experience, I guess. And how is working for Formula1.com? What are the ups and downs, and how is it for you?
Yeah, well, I can assure you, I am human, not superhuman. It's a pretty amazing job, really. For being in this world, it's pretty good. You know, obviously, the magazine media industry has been in like a very changeable period for like a few years now, because there's that whole migration to digital, and you almost feel like it's nearly settled down, but you know there's still, you know, you can't, some people don't really know what to do with the paywall. So you have some magazines where like, well, then if you want premium content, you pay for that. And da, da, da. So I kind of feel pleased to be out of that and, you know, have a bit of job security as well. That's good. And then, you know, obviously being with the championship itself, the company itself, it does mean that, you know, I can't necessarily, sometimes my opinion on something would have to be, you know, softened or tailored to that, because, you know, you are representing the championship. Yeah. It doesn't mean I'm not gagged, you know. I think there is a degree of leniency in that. But, you know, you can't go writing sort of stupid stuff. You know, which you wouldn't want to do anyway. But, you know, you can't be too vocal in your opinions about something. Yeah. Which is fine, you know. But I mean, one thing I would dispel is like this idea that, you know, because we're Formula1.com, we get access like that, you know, that I can like get on the phone to Sebastian Vettel and be like, all right, Seb, mate, can I have an interview? You know, in terms of the mechanics of that, you know, we're no different to any other media source, really.
I think the questioning part is also must be neutral in some way, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you obviously you can't go and then make your interview totally flat and you know, not talk about anything juicy at all. Like, but you know, we would sort of liaise with the teams to some extent if there was something they were really uncomfortable. You know. When you're doing interviews now, you know, the PR's there, their phone goes on the table next to you, they're sat there. Anytime you ask a question that's a bit, so, you know, you're looking at other drives with other teams, and then you can see the PR just going like blue next to you. But it's, you know, I like to just, when I'm interviewing a driver, you know, you want to you're just another journalist, really. And you just want to show that you care about what you're writing, that you've researched about what you're writing. For example, so Daniel Kvyat, I interviewed him at last year's testing. Yeah. And, you know, I knew that if you go to an interview with Daniel Kvyat, if you just keep asking him about being replaced at Red Bull by Verstappen in 2016 and that whole program and what happened with that, you're going to end up with like a pretty bored Daniel Kvyat pretty quickly. so then I kind of made it my mission to like go a little bit further. And so we, instead of talking about that, we talked about what life was like when he was like a test driver with Ferrari in 2018, and just how life had been like that. And also, you know, doing a bit of research about his childhood, about like his first mentor. So just making, and the nice thing in an interview is if you kind of drop something like that, it kind of gets the driver on side, because drivers in that situation can sometimes go into the kind of automatic response, and that kind of jars them out of it, and then they're kind of with you. So it's good to give them a little depth charge just to get them on side. That's all good. And like, you know, in terms of being like, you know, the PR side, I feel I should say that I'm also like excited about the sport's future. I'm excited about the fact that, you know, effectively my boss now is Stefano Domenicali, albeit that, you know, many layers above me. I mean, it's weird when I go, not that I've been into the office for a long time because of, you know, coronavirus restrictions here in the UK, but I like walk around my office and I look in an office and that's Pat Simmons, who like, it's like Alonso's, you know, technical director. Or I walk up like, and I'll see Stefano Domenicali, who's there with Schumacher. And like the last time I was in, we had a period where they opened offices a little bit during the coronavirus, and I went in and there was like about 3 people in the office. So I'm working away on my computer and I hear footsteps behind me, and I look behind me and it's Ross Brawn. And in his very polite way, he came to me and he said, excuse me, do you know where they keep any batteries? He was trying to find like the stationery cupboard of Formula One where they keep batteries. So I was like, yes, just understood that. And I'm like, that's Ross Brawn, you know. It's the guy who won, you know, apart from Benetton and Ferrari, he won a championship with his own car. And he's like in the office with me.
Asking for batteries.
Yeah, asking for batteries, and I'm pointing them in the right direction. They were AAAs. I don't think I'm giving that much away. So yeah, it's like a crazy trip to be in the company.
We talked about lots of good stuff and bad stuff, but you started with the bad stuff. Actually, you've seen Senna's accident in your first race memory. I mean, how you deal with in your career, actually, your professional life, and what was your like toughest story you ever had to write?
Well, I mean, it probably won't come as too much of a surprise, but you know, I think I, like you, thought Grosjean's accident was potentially going to be fatal, and I was relieved when it wasn't. Unfortunately, you know, 2019, the Antoine Hubert accident was just the worst thing that I've ever had to cover, you know. I mean, I had worked in motorsport with Jules Bianchi's accident, but I was not in Formula One at that time. So, you know, it was sad, but, you know, I was kind of seeing it from afar, you know. Where we work for the races when I'm not at the race is in a place quite close to my house here. And we're all in this sort of cinema room with a big screen in front of us and all the data and timing. And, you know, I don't know if you've seen it in Netflix, the Drive to Survive series, but, you know, when Lewis stops and looks at the monitor and he's like, oh, damn. It was exactly the same. Like, you just knew that it was like a really bad one. And my flashes of memory were like just seeing the cockpit like destroyed. And you just got this sinking feeling because you know it's bad. And then it's sort of, you know, you never know straight away, like the official version of events. And then my editor-in-chief just came down the road and very quietly said, like, Hubert's passed away. Guerrero's in hospital with a very, like, serious leg injuries. And you just think, and the sad thing is, or the poignant thing for me is being at the French Grand Prix that year, I'd gone to Puerto Rico. My only memory of Antoine Hubert actually was being really annoyed with him because I was in the queue to pick up my hire car, and he came in and got straight into this priority queue and went and got his hire car quickly. I was like, you lucky bastard. But I was with Will Buxton at the time, the Formula One presenter, and because Will was sort of from a GP2, F2 background, Antoine came and said hello and seemed like an incredibly nice guy. And I believe he did win that weekend. But, you know, again, like with the Senna thing, it's not the fact that he's talented or not that makes it sad. But at the same time, you know, watching Formula 2 and Formula 3, you quickly get a sense of like who are the drivers who are like the real deal.
Yeah.
And like for me, he was definitely like the real deal. France's next Formula 1 star. Like he had proper star quality with him. And so yeah, it's just a horrendous thing. I don't know about, you know, your memories of watching it or whether you saw it, but
yeah, I mean, like the all Formula 1 seems always like so glamorous, so shiny. It's for me, it's always like the top of the motorsport, that's for sure. And then something happens like this, and I feel like wow, this is real life. Like these are real people with families, like that are going through with that. Like for the Grosjean, like there was like all the fuss about like where to like show him his accident or not and stuff. And but as a fan, at that moment, I always feel like I really got scared when I see like someone crashes. And when you are watching Formula 1 so long, you know, if they don't show the car for a while, you know the rule after that.
Yeah.
So that feeling is really, really not good at all, even for me, just someone who's watching from TV time to time on the circuit. So I can't even imagine how drivers are coping with that, how you guys are coping with that. It's how those families are coping with that. It's really tense moment, and you feel like it's a real life. It's not a TV show or something like that.
No, exactly. But then, you know, and then at the same time, you know, at that moment, you're not a fan. You're there to then tell people what's going on. So
yeah,
you've got to get switched into this weird mode where you're like, right, that's just an event that has happened, and I need to sort of get the details of it and report it as accurately as I can.
Yeah.
And it's only, you know, you'd sort of drive home after that, and then now that's when it would hit you, and like, this kid has died today. And you know, like, I think like a lot of people, like I sort of got that false sense of security. You know, you could see the Bianchi accident as being a bit of a few unfortunate events coming together with the, you know, the rescue operation on the track, and so it was kind of an exceptional, extraordinary circumstance. With Hubert, it was a kind of straight racing accident.
Yeah.
And so it sort of burst my bubble of this false sense of motorsport is safe, which, you know, you should never really become
that.
Oh yeah, you can't become blasé. Like, thankfully, it's not like, you know, Jackie Stewart always tells that story of how he went to like 4 funerals, like one a month in the start of 1968.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it's not like that anymore. But maybe that makes it all the more shocking when it does happen now.
Yeah. Like that's. I want to ask one more thing, like about like working for Formula 1. That's, as I said before, like sport looks so shiny from outside. It's all glamorous, beautiful girls, like nice cars, and
beautiful men too, huh?
Beautiful men, yeah. Also, like all.
I know the girls like Charlotte Leclerc.
With like Hamilton with gorgeous clothes around, like great sponsors, like all brands from all over the world. So it seems like something so, I don't know, glamorous, so shiny, and it is actually. But for a person who works for Formula 1, I believe like there are like downsides of it. I mean, it's a demanding sport that you go almost like this year, like 21, 22 race in a year. It's, and
23.
yeah, all over the world. Like you go everywhere in the world, and it's demanding. So how is it for you? Like, what would your advices for a newcomers or who wants to be Formula One?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't travel to all the races. We've got a senior writer, Lawrence Barretto, who's very experienced, and he's more the guy who's sort of on the ground. So he does a lot of traveling days a year. But obviously, you're still working the weekends. So I guess my first thing to say would be like, forget your weekends if you want to work in Formula One or motorsport in general.
Yeah.
You know, motorsport happens at the weekend. So, you know, if you're the type of person who likes to go clubbing on a Friday night and Saturday night, you know,
it's not your sport.
It's not your sport. No, you got to learn to go clubbing on Tuesday. You know, of course, that's only when the season's on, and you know, and usually the pattern is one weekend on, one weekend off. If you've got that spacing of the 2 week race.
But it was very crowded last season. Like it was 3 in a row, and even it was like hard for me to go watch it every Sunday. I can't even imagine how it was for you, like writing all those news, catching all those news.
Well, because as well, you know, it's not just the Sunday and the Saturday. You're writing, you know, that was also the time when they introduced the press conference where it was like new team every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you'd cover, so start with Williams, and if George Russell said a line or Nicholas Latifi said a line, you'd have to turn that into a story. Then who would it be? Haas would come on, and the other staff writer will cover that one. And you, while their 20 minutes is going on, you had to get your Williams story ready and up so that you could then listen to Alfa Romeo. So Thursdays was just like being punched in the face repeatedly. I don't know how it's going to be this year. And then Friday, you know, they're long days. Also, that's the thing, you know, it's not like a job where you say, right, it's 9 to 5. You can have sort of hours, but your hours are kind of like as long as a piece of string on like a Friday evening, because yes, you've got your like set content that's going to come up, but if something major has happened, if the FIA are waiting to make a decision, like you could be on till sort of 11, 12 o'clock at night, even if you're on like European time.
Yeah.
So if you like routine and like just everything being like that, and then you get out and then you've got work life, it's not really for you. It is a bit all consuming.
Yeah.
But obviously, if that's the world you want to be in, then get into that world, and then there's a lot of fun to be had there. I mean, in terms of like other advice I'd give people, one thing would be, you know, like the mechanics. I don't mean like the mechanics putting the wheels on, like the mechanics of a Formula One race weekend are essentially the same as like a Turkish touring car championship weekend, in that, you know, you'll have press conference, media stuff, qualifying, race. So you don't need to get into motorsport. Say if you're like 18 and want to get into motorsport, you don't have to go, right, well, it's Formula One or nothing.
Yeah.
If you can learn your craft at whatever age you are, getting into that and like saying, you know, oh, I want to go and like report on this race at Istanbul Park, but it's maybe not the Formula One race, you'll still learn a lot about like the mechanics of being on the ground at a race weekend. And then there will be totally transferable to Formula One if and when you get there, you know, but it might throw you up down a different path that you end up happier. So I think that there's lots of ways to skin a cat, as they say in England. And so I think the idea that like it's sort of Formula One or nothing, like it's a kind of binary thing, I think that's wrong. So like, you know, do some work for other championships if you want to get in and get experience, and, you know, do it at low level. Like there must be, I'm sure there's loads of like Turkish club racing championships. Turkish superbikes are quite popular in Turkey, aren't they?
Yeah, we have a very famous driver, like who is champion, and we have WRC in
of course you got
Turkey,
it.
so it's more easy to reach. Like I remember I went to 2010 WRC in Turkey, and I was shocked because the cars were there open, drivers like just walking around, just talking with the mechanics. And after Formula One, I was shocked. And I see different side of motorsport. Like I understand how people also love rallying and other stuff because you can get more closer to action. I mean, you can also get closer to Formula One action, but it's different levels. So
it's different levels. One thing I've noticed actually is that everybody who works in Formula One, if they have some connection with rally, they tend to be like cooler, like easier to deal with.
Yeah.
So, and I look at like Valtteri Bottas is like a lovely bloke. Toto Wolff is like nice and open, was a rally driver. Carlos Sainz is like one of the nicest drivers to chat to, son of obviously Carlos Sainz. Who else? But yeah, anybody who's got like a rally connection is sort of easier to talk to, because I think Kimi Raikkonen maybe is slightly different.
Yeah, I was about to say Kimi Raikkonen, but I wasn't sure about that. He was cool. He was always cool, I guess.
Yeah. But it was funny, like, because I know Kimi, he had this reputation that it was really difficult. But I think when he went to Alfa Romeo, I think Alfa Romeo gave him a bit more of that like vibe that he'd enjoyed at like the WRC.
Yeah.
So I remember like we were in like a big media thing when he first joined the testing. So it's about like 100 media there. And I asked a question thinking that I'd get the sort of standards. I'm not that interested. Yeah, Kimi wouldn't like shut up. He was just kept talking and talking and talking. I was like, oh, he's happier here. So yeah, so that's another thing. I would also like just advise people to like reading bad writing is something I find like excruciating. So I sort of advise people to sort of think of it as like a bit of, not to be pretentious, but think of it as a bit of an art and a craft.
Yeah.
Like putting sentences together, like it's about word choice. What I'm coming to realize, like the more I go into my career, it's also about like rhythm. So maybe like my musical background helps with that, but how sentences feel in your mouth or in like when you're reading them in your head is really important. So, write like lots, and you could even like practice, like you can write race reports even if they didn't get published anywhere, but it would still be useful. Or, propose your services to like some motorsport blog or website or whatever that's maybe a bit lower level and is looking for sort of just submissions from people looking to get into writing. Like I know in the UK, like Drive Tribe has given people the chance to like have their work up, but it's sort of within the Drive Tribe bubble.
Yeah, I believe it's like that for motorsport.com. Turkish edition is also offering fans something like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a fine point because you don't want to become like sort of free labor for people. Like, I think there's a point where you can sort of justify it and be like, right, I really am just starting out. But if they're starting to count on you and you're doing stuff quite frequently and they still don't want to pay you, then I think you've got the right to say, well, no, I want to get paid this much, or you just walk away.
And get a proper job.
Yeah. But, you could do it on the weekends and stuff. Like, I'd say it would be like, I think it's good to study like the history and try and get into like the technical side of motorsport. It will just make you like quite valuable, and, being aware of the context in which everything's happening and what stuff means, like, but I'm by no means like a technical expert. Like I'm a bit of a technical idiot, actually. but having a little bit of knowledge of like, that front wing does that to the airflow, or, it's like in wash, out, all this type of stuff. If you can get a little bit of knowledge about that, I think is useful. And similarly, I mean, I'm personally like a big fan of the history of motorsport in general and Formula One. Actually, I brought a book along that I'm reading that at the moment. So it's this really first edition of this great Sterling Moss book, chatting mostly about trying to meet women. That's what Sterling Moss seemed to talk about. So yeah, I think it's worth like finding out about that stuff. And then also because of this, like the digital migration, if you could do something like run a YouTube channel, like you did, or having some sort of skills of like cutting audio, because podcasting is becoming such a big thing.
Yeah.
Or presenting in that way, writing a blog so you can practice your writing as well. Like I think all that's like super useful. And if you can put on your CV, I've got experience with audio and these programs, or video editing is another thing that's like really useful. It can only be a boon to your career in this sort of new media age. So
yeah, I believe like you said in the beginning, like your friends weren't watching Formula One when you were little, and I felt like, and I started watching Formula One in 2005. Those were the days that social media were starting, just at very beginning, and I was also feeling like that, because like I was the girl who loves cars and there was no other people around like loves Formula One, motorsport, any kind of that. But then Twitter started happening, Facebook started happening, and I start to find someone who also loves Formula One, who also loves motorsport, and I felt like I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. There are some people who love this sport, and I feel lucky that we are the generation that can experience that. I mean, there are like bullying and negative stuff on the internet, but I think it made sport much more closer than before, because before that we only had like our commentator in Turkey. He's really good in his job. I mean, I learned lots from him, but having some other connections like Formula1.com, giving extra videos, interviews, or seeing someone sharing something from the track, it's something different. The area is more make sport better, actually. I believe that.
It gives people this sort of instant community without having to sort of travel to the races.
Yeah.
I mean, it did take Formula One quite a long time to get up to speed with that. Bernie Ecclestone, famously very resistant to the Twitter idea. But like once Liberty Media took over and started 2017, it's just become like we caught up, and got up to speed. And now I think like the Formula One social media is really good. And hopefully, being a woman who likes Formula One, like that will be less of a, you won't be such a minority going forward. This like diversity will start to increase in the sport, and we'll see more people of different colors and sexes and genders. And we can just become a sort of motorsports whole.
Thank you for today. Thank you for answering everything so honestly and telling your story. It was lovely for me to hear all of your story. Hopefully it will be for all my subscribers and followers, because I enjoyed it a lot. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pina. This is a lovely way to spend a Sunday afternoon, just chatting about Formula One.
Yeah, hopefully in 3 weeks we will spend our time on Sunday watching races again, and you will cover the news for us.
Yeah, I'll be talking about Formula One a lot. And being like much more stressed, drinking about 10 million cups more coffee.